It all started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I remember because school had just let out early due to the storm warning, and the sky looked like it was ready to collapse. My friend Tyler had texted me that morning saying he wouldn't be at school. Some family thing he didn't explain, but I figured I'd stop by his place anyway and drop off the notes from class. I'd been to Tyler's house 100 times. We grew up together, and I probably spent more time at his place than my own when we were kids. His mom, Claire, was always welcoming, the kind of mom who remembered your birthday and asked if you'd eaten. She had this calm, graceful presence, like nothing ever fazed her. When I rang the doorbell, I didn't expect her to answer. I thought maybe she was out running errands or working upstairs. She freelanced from home, doing interior design or something creative like that. But a moment later, the door opened, and there she was. "Hey," she said, smiling softly. "Tyler's not here, if you're looking for him." I shrugged, raindrops still sliding down the back of my neck. "Yeah, I know. Just thought I'd drop off the notes from today. Didn't want him to fall behind." Claire looked at me for a moment, then opened the door wider. "You're soaked. Come in. I'll make you some tea or something warm." I hesitated. I wasn't planning to stay, but the warmth spilling from the house and the smell of cinnamon or vanilla, something baked, pulled me inside. I kicked off my shoes and followed her into the kitchen. She was dressed casually, sweatpants and a loose beige top, her hair tied up like she'd been cleaning or relaxing. The house was quiet, only the hum of the dishwasher in the background. I handed her the notebook, and she placed it neatly on the counter. "You've really grown up," she said, glancing at me with a smile that lingered just a second longer than usual. "I remember when you and Tyler would build forts out of couch cushions and refuse to eat anything that wasn't chicken nuggets." I chuckled. "Yeah. Guess that was a while ago." She poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs and handed me one. Her fingers brushed mine briefly, not deliberately, just lightly, but for some reason I noticed. Maybe it was the way the silence stretched after that. I sat at the kitchen island while she leaned against the counter across from me. The tea was warm and spicy, like something herbal she always had. For a moment we just sat there, sipping, the storm tapping at the windows. "You still live next door?" she asked. "Yeah, same place. Mom's been trying to convince me to apply out of state for college. But, I don't know. I kinda like it here." Claire tilted her head. "You're a loyal one. That's rare." I wasn't sure how to respond to that, so I just smiled and took another sip. We talked a little more about school, about Tyler, about the weather. It was easy, comfortable, but every now and then, I caught her looking at me in a way I couldn't quite read. Not inappropriate, but different, focused, like she was seeing something new in me. Eventually, I stood up, setting the empty mug in the sink. "Well, I should probably head out. Don't want to overstay my welcome." She turned to face me, arms crossed loosely. "You never do. Actually," she paused, "I could use a hand." "With what?" "I was reorganizing the guest room. Thought maybe you could help me move a few boxes upstairs." Tyler was supposed to help me, but she trailed off, then smiled. "He's conveniently vanished." "Yeah, that sounds like him," I said, laughing. "Sure, I can help." I followed her down the hallway, up the stairs and toward the guest room, a space that always smelled faintly of linen and lavender. The boxes weren't that heavy, but she made small talk as I carried them one by one. When we finished, she leaned against the doorframe and looked at me again. That same look, like she was measuring something, deciding something. "You've really changed," she said softly. You're not a kid anymore. There was something in her voice, warmth, pride, maybe a hint of something else I didn't want to name. I looked at her, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she pushed off the doorframe and walked back toward the stairs. Thanks for helping, she said over her shoulder. Stay a little longer if you want. I didn't move right away. There was something different about today. About the way she looked at me. About the way I noticed. Something was shifting quietly, like the storm outside. And I wasn't sure what it meant. I stayed. At first, I told myself it was just to be polite. Claire had always been kind to me, and I figured helping her out and keeping her company for a few minutes longer wouldn't hurt. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the whole truth. Something about the way she spoke, the way she looked at me today, it unsettled me in a way that didn't feel wrong, just unfamiliar. We ended up back in the kitchen. Claire poured us both another cup of tea, this time with a splash of something stronger, whiskey, I think. She called it her afternoon fix, laughed it off, but I could tell she was testing something, testing me. The kitchen felt smaller than usual, warmer, not just because of the tea or the stove, but because of the silence between us. It wasn't awkward, it was charged. I was just going through some old boxes earlier, she said, sitting across from me. Found some pictures of you and Tyler when you were, what, 8? 9? Oh God, I groaned. Was I still wearing that ridiculous bowl haircut? She laughed. Worse, you were missing your front teeth and had chocolate all over your face. We both laughed, but hers trailed off slowly. Her smile stayed, though it turned softer, more nostalgic. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, and rested her chin on her hand. You were always sweet, she said. Polite, different from the rest of Tyler's friends. I shrugged, trying to brush it off. I was probably just shy. No, she said, her voice firmer. You were just more mature. Even back then, I didn't quite know what to say to that. Compliments from a mom, even one I admired, hit differently when they came with that look in her eyes. Claire stood up and walked over to the counter. She pulled down a small photo album and opened it on the table in front of me. Sure enough, there we were, me and Tyler, in the backyard with messy hair and sticks in our hands like swords. That was the summer we put in the new patio, she said. You guys were obsessed with that muddy patch near the sprinkler. I smiled. We said it was quicksand. You always made up the stories. Tyler just followed you. Her tone was light, but again, that pause, that thoughtful glance. I flipped through a few more pages, pretending to be casual, but my fingers trembled slightly. She sat beside me this time, closer. Our knees nearly brushed under the table. Sometimes I think time moves faster in this house, she said quietly. Like one day you're wiping mud off a kid's knees, and the next, he's sitting across from you, and you barely recognize him. I glanced at her. You recognize me though, right? Claire smiled. Oh, I recognize you. More than you think. Her words hung in the air like steam off the tea, and suddenly I felt like the room had no oxygen. She reached out and gently touched my forearm. Just a brief contact, warm and firm. You've grown into a handsome man, she said, her voice softer now. And not just on the outside. I swallowed hard. She didn't look away, and I didn't either. There was a pause, a long one. Her fingers lingered for a moment before she stood again, walking toward the hallway. I'm going to start dinner soon, she said. You hungry? I nodded automatically. Sure, I could eat. She gave a small smile, the kind that curved only one side of her mouth and turned down the hallway. But before she disappeared around the corner, she looked back at me. One last glance. "You're not like the other boys," she said. And then she closed the door to the dining room behind her. Not slammed, not pulled quickly, just closed. Deliberate, quiet, final. I sat there, staring at the empty seat beside me, the echo of her voice still loud in my head. I wasn't sure if she meant to say it out loud, or if I was supposed to follow. But for the first time that day, I didn't feel like a guest in her home. I felt like something else entirely. I didn't move right away. The way she closed that door, calm, controlled, left me suspended in a strange space between reality and something else. I sat there, hands on the warm ceramic of my mug, trying to figure out if this was still just a polite visit or if I had stepped into something more. The hum of the house filled the silence. The fridge buzzed faintly. The faint clink of Claire's movements somewhere deeper inside the hallway echoed through the walls. I stood up slowly, unsure of what exactly I was doing, but pulled by a strange kind of gravity. I walked toward the hallway, past the family photos on the wall, Tyler's school pictures, a photo of Claire and her late husband from years ago, sun-drenched and smiling. I barely glanced at them. The dining room door, the one she had closed, was now slightly ajar. I hesitated, but then I heard her voice, soft, almost casual. "You can come in, you know?" I pushed the door open slowly. The dining room lights were dimmer than the rest of the house, casting everything in a soft, golden hue. Claire stood at the far end, facing the window, tying her hair up in a loose bun. She wasn't wearing the cardigan from earlier, just the beige tank top, simple and close-fitting. It wasn't revealing, but something about the way it clung to her made me suddenly aware of every breath I took. She turned, not startled, not embarrassed, just calm, like she'd been expecting me to follow. "Can you grab those candles?" she asked, nodding to a box on the side table. "Thought we'd light a few." I stepped in, my heartbeat louder than my footsteps. She took the candles from me and began placing them carefully on the table, lighting each one slowly. Her hands were steady. Everything about her was unhurried, intentional. Once the last candle flickered to life, she looked at me again. "I like quiet evenings," she said. "They make you notice things." I nodded, unsure if I was supposed to speak. "Like what?" She took a step closer. "Like how someone looks at you when they think you're not watching." We were only a foot apart now. She reached out and smoothed the front of my shirt, a gentle, meaningless gesture on the surface, but the contact felt loaded, like a current passed between us. Her hand dropped, but her eyes stayed locked on mine, that same confident, unreadable expression. "Most people look at you and still see a boy," she said. "But I don't." I didn't respond. Couldn't. Claire exhaled slowly, like she was about to say something else, but instead, she walked past me toward the doorway behind me. I thought she was leaving the room, but then I heard it. Click. She turned the lock. The sound echoed in my chest. I turned around. She was still standing by the door, her hand on the knob. She met my eyes calm, unwavering. "No one's coming back until tomorrow," she said. "Tyler's staying at his dad's and I just needed some company tonight." My mouth was dry. "Claire." She walked slowly back toward me, stopping just short of closing the distance completely. "You don't have to do anything," she said gently. "But I've watched you grow up, and I've seen who you are now. I don't see you as a kid. I haven't for a long time. I swallowed hard. I don't know what this is, I said quietly. She smiled. You don't have to know. The candles flickered between us. Outside, a car passed by, distant, meaningless. Inside, everything had shifted. She took my hand, not forcefully, just enough to make it clear that this moment was hers too. And for the first time since walking through that front door, I wasn't thinking about Tyler, or whether this was wrong, or what tomorrow might look like. I was thinking about how I'd never seen her like this. Not just beautiful, but certain. Certain of me, certain of herself. The door was closed, and the world outside no longer mattered. The morning light filtered softly through the kitchen window, spilling across the table where I sat alone. The same place where she had poured my tea the night before. The same mug was still in front of me. Empty now, cold, like the echo of something that had happened but couldn't quite be named. I heard footsteps down the hall. My breath caught. Claire appeared a moment later, dressed in a light sweater and jeans. Her hair was damp, fresh from a shower, and tied back loosely. No makeup, no performance, just her, quiet, natural, like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had, depending on how you define something. She smiled at me, not sheepish, not bold, just warm. Morning, she said, her voice light. Morning, I replied, sitting straighter. She moved around the kitchen like she always had when I used to come over as a kid. Opened the cabinet, pulled out 2 mugs, started the coffee. Should have felt normal, but it didn't. Not anymore. You sleep okay? She asked, glancing at me over her shoulder. I hesitated. Yeah. She nodded, pouring coffee. She handed me a mug, then sat down across from me, resting her elbows lightly on the table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "We don't have to talk about it." My eyes met hers. Should we? Claire took a slow sip of coffee, then set the mug down with a soft clink. I think some things are better left as moments, she said. Not everything needs to be explained. I wanted to ask 1,000 things about Tyler, about what this meant, about whether it was just loneliness or something more, but I didn't. Not because I didn't want to know, but because maybe she was right. Some things lived better in silence. Still, I couldn't help but ask one question. Do you regret it? She didn't look away. No. Then she reached out and placed her hand over mine. It's okay if you don't know how to feel yet, she said gently. You're not like the other boys, that wasn't just a line. You've always been different, thoughtful, kind. I saw it in you before you ever saw it in yourself. I looked down at our hands, then back at her. And now, she smiled, bittersweet. Now we remember it for what it was. Something real, even if just for one night. We sat there a few minutes more, sipping coffee, the quiet between us no longer awkward, just full of things we both understood but didn't say. Eventually, I stood. She walked me to the door. No kiss, no promises, just a glance, a soft smile, and her final words as she opened the door. Take care of yourself, okay? I nodded. You too. And then I stepped out into the sunlight, the world just as it had been, and yet nothing felt the same. I still saw Claire sometimes, at the grocery store, on the street. She always waved, always smiled. And I always wondered, what if the door hadn't closed? What if I'd said something different? But I never regretted that night, because it was the night someone saw me for who I really was, and didn't look away.
Bye bye.